All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Rock County Data Center Town Hall. Welcome. Join us. Tonight's event is hosted by Rock County Neighbors for Responsible Development and is a countywide effort to get out factual information regarding data centers and the potential impacts that they may have on our communities. My name is Cassandra Pope, and I am one of the organizers for No Janesville Data Center. A group of concerned citizens in Janesville, including myself, started a Facebook group last September to try to get the word out about Janesville's data center proposal that was announced in July of last year. There were NDAs, closed door sessions, missing information, and many unanswered questions. So we set out to uncover the truth and to include the community in whatever we found, which includes events like tonight. Now, with another data center possibility in the town of Beloit, Rock County has even more serious issues to consider. So we decided to bring in some experts to help us learn more. We want to take a moment to thank all of our city and county elected officials who have joined us tonight. We are grateful that you would take time out of your busy schedules to learn as much as you can about data centers so that you can make informed and educated decisions on behalf of our communities. Let's give all of our elected officials a round of applause. I'm honored to be emceeing tonight's event with Shelly Stroman, and I'll let her introduce herself and get us started.
All right, welcome everybody. My name is Shelly Stroman, and like many of you, I didn't have much information, honestly, or much interest in data centers until I learned that one was being proposed almost literally in my backyard. And that's what woke me up. It pushed me to start asking questions, and the more I learned, the more concerns I had, not just for my community, but for my family. It's funny what you don't know until you start paying attention. The reason I got involved is probably the same as a lot of you. I heard something and I didn't fully understand it. I wanted more information, and honestly, I didn't even know where to get it. I was fortunate enough to connect with an amazing group of people and so many other incredible people that I've met along the way who are doing the work to dig into the facts, share information, and make sure we all have an opportunity to learn, because that's what matters. Having access to real information so each one of us can decide what feels right for ourselves, our families, and our community. And that's what we really hope we can get out of tonight. That you walk out of here knowing more than when you walked in, maybe with some answers and probably with some new questions too. And more than anything, I hope it pushes you to stay informed, stay engaged, and not step back from this. Ask the questions, guys. Figure out how to get involved, use your voice, because at the end of the day, this is our community and we all have a stake in what happens here. Tonight, we're joined by someone many of you, like me, probably already feel like you know. He is a Wisconsin native, comedian, author, and Emmy-winning journalist. That's known for his Manitowoc Minute. I can't quite do the accent. And his presence on social media. He's built a national following by bringing Midwest life into the spotlight, sharing humor, the values, and the realities of communities like ours. But at the core of what he does is something that we all care about: community, connection, and not losing sight of where we come from. Recently, he's also taken a deeper interest in projects like large-scale data center development, because he understands these decisions don't just impact infrastructure, they impact people, land, and the future of the communities that we call home. And that's exactly why we're having him here tonight, because he matters. So tonight, I have the honor of welcoming Charlie Behrens. Not just with knowledge, but his heart.
Thank you for that intro. That was really sweet of you. Give all these guys a big round of applause. Cool. Is this a slideshow? You should, all right. Oh, someone's on the phone. I'll take it. Who is it? We are here in, at the base of the Cheddar Curtain, ladies and gentlemen. So I gotta ask, where are my Packers fans at? Where are my Packers owners at? Okay, good, good. When you do your taxes, you can write off beers at Lambeau Field. It's capital expenditure. I asked the facts, and they're fine with it. But we are in disputed territory for some, so we have a Bears fans here tonight. Okay, cue the Braves. This guy just a typical Bears response there. Here's a question just for the Bears fans. Are you guys moving to Indiana? No. I hope you do, honestly. Because I've already made the Indiana Bears suck shirts and I trademarked IBS. I'm gonna make a killing. All right, nice. Well, I just want to say, yeah, some of you are like, I hope he makes that shirt. I just want to thank you all for coming out and again, give a special thanks to the local lawmakers and politicians and the economic development folks who are either here today or they're tuning in on the Zoom deal. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much. Just for an open dialogue and conversation on these AI data centers. I think a lot of us are learning together in real time. It's very fast moving technology. It's tough to wrap your head around it. And I also know we got some tradesmen here tonight. I just want to thank the tradeswomen for just building the future of Wisconsin, whatever it is. Thank you, guys. Reason I'm here today is just because, like, I want to put the power back in the hands of the people of Wisconsin to decide Wisconsin's future. That's it. And I'm here tonight because I don't want big tech deciding the future of Rock County. I want Rock County to decide the future of Rock County. And in order to make a decision, you need information, but you can't just get information from one side. You know, that's like asking my Uncle Jack how big the walleye he caught was. When he goes, no, buddy, I'm sorry, Jack, you were just drinking the whole day, okay? Not catch a musky-sized walleye. All right, so first of all, what is an AI data center? The tech industry loves to say if you use email, if you use social media, if you use banking, whatever it is, if you like pictures on your phone, you're using a data center. And so if you don't want one in your backyard, you're a hypocrite. But that's not really that true, okay? There's a big difference between a traditional data center and a hyperscale AI data center. Very big difference. AI data center uses different hardware, which needs more energy and more power and more land, and that's what the big issue is, you know? A traditional data center can be as small as a closet, but an AI hyperscale data center, take the one in Port Washington. That alone is 2.5 million square feet, up to 1.3 gigawatts in the first build out alone. 1.3 gigawatts, put that in perspective, you guys. Marty McFly only needed 1.21 gigawatts to go back to the future. And that was very dangerous. He almost made out with his mom. AI data centers, they don't just store your data, they use your data to train AI models to do tasks you would otherwise do. Comparing an AI data center to a traditional data center, I've used this comparison before, but it's like comparing a dog to a wolf. You know, yeah, they both kind of look a little bit like dogs. I would not take a wolf pheasant on it. I will get the collar on. I lose a hand. I mean, forget about trying to get that thing neutered, you know? Anyway, the truth is, none of us asked these tech companies to take so much of our personal data and our copyright material, and now they want our land, and our water and our power to store that data, to train AI to do whatever big tech wants them to do to make the most money. None of us asked for them. Even while polling shows that 70% of registered Wisconsin voters believe the cost of data centers outweigh the benefits, big tech is still moving full steam ahead. So why is Silicon Valley calling the shots for Wisconsin? Big tech has a motto. I think it was coined by Mark Zuckerberg. And that's move fast and break things. But that's not what we grew up learning here in the Midwest. Because we don't break things. We build things with saws. Okay, and if you move fast and break something with a saw, a lot of times you can't go it back. I grew up woodworking with my dad. He's a real good carpenter. And if I said, Dad, I'm gonna move fast and break things, he would call me an entitled little brick. My dad didn't teach me to move fast and break things. He taught me to measure twice and cut once. Because good wood is expensive. It's also hard to attach a finger. So the point being is, I think that Wisconsin wisdom is something Silicon Valley can learn a lot from if they just took enough time to slow down and listen. When you move fast to break things, you get Beaver Dam. Since Meta's AI data center broke ground last year, wells have run dry, marshes have drained, creeks, as you'll hear later tonight, they stopped flowing. And when they started again, they look completely different. When you move fast and break things, you get Fort Washington with 14-hour construction day was agreed upon. But as soon as the ink was dry, Vantage strong-armed Port Washington's representatives to agree to a 24/7 construction, turning this peaceful rural landscape into what neighbors call hellish and demoralizing. When you move fast to break things, you get Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin. Microsoft's AI data center has been blaring a constant high-pitched drone that's caused neighbors to want to move away from their dream homes. Big tech is moving fast and breaking the communities that make us who we are. And that's why we are here tonight standing up to slow them down. And think about it. Is this really a good idea, the way we're going about doing this? And too many of our lawmakers are not standing up. Our federal government, they haven't done it. The best they got big tech to do is make a pledge to say they want to increase our power bills. But can we really trust a pledge from the wealthiest companies in the world? A pledge, think about this, we'll poll, how many of us took a pledge in DARE class? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of us have gone down to Illinois recently for a little grocery shopping? I know I'm not the only one. The state lawmakers left Madison without passing one law to protect us from these AI data centers. They couldn't even pass a bill that says no NDAs for AI data centers. And look, in my opinion, that was the most basic one to pass. That was the easiest one, you know, because I mean, I grew up learning that, like, you don't, if you want to say something that you don't want anyone else to hear, you go to confession. You don't sign an NDA, and by the way, Father Tom is holding confessions every Tuesday night at Bootleggers, if you ask. But it took our state lawmakers absolutely no time to sign the tax breaks for big tech because the utilities lobbied for it, which is why these AI data centers are here to begin with. So the real question is, why can't we protect people like we protect the bottom line? Nice, I wrote break for applause, so I'm glad. There's no guarantees how much water will be used. They like to say it's a closed loop system, okay. But that just means more energy, and all that energy needs millions of gallons of water from all the power plants. Closed loop system also means adding chemicals at a time when the EPA is fast tracking chemical approvals. That's this slide right here. They're fast tracking these chemical approvals. Why? It's not the science that's guiding it, in my opinion, it's the economy. And we don't know what's in these, we don't know what these chemicals are, we don't know how they're disposed of. And in Wisconsin, we've already got a bad PFAS problem, you guys. I go fishing up north and I'm told you can't eat the ducks, you can't eat the fish. Because they're loaded with PFAS, okay? I want my walleye with a side of coleslaw, not cancer. That's that simple, maybe an old fashioned too. How do we guarantee that big tech will protect our health and environment and not just pay the fine because it's cheaper? Did not get the applause right there, that's mine. I just didn't turn the page fast enough, awkward silence. Yeah, there's a sign right there, you can't trick data. Yeah, no, data's not gonna get you hammered, I've tried. And phone ringing. Yes, these AI data centers can create short-term construction jobs. And yes, they can support some industries. But my question is, at what cost? Because if the price of progress is our water and our land and our power bills and tax breaks, so billionaires can become trillionaires and turning America's dairy land into America's data land, is that a future we want to live in? The correct answer is yeah, no, okay? We'll get that. And I've said this before, but right now there is more regulation on a bratwurst than the entire artificial intelligence industry, you guys. And there's nothing wrong with the brats I'm serving out of the back of my truck. They deserve that fine. Big tech thinks about the next quarter, but Wisconsin, we are here tonight to think about the next generation. Yes. And the only thing that scares the tech industry is what's happening in this room tonight. Because this, right here in this room, this is something you can't buy. Different people from different backgrounds, different walks of life coming together. We got Democrats, we got Republicans, we got hunters, we got fishers, we got bird watchers, we got swingers, we got we send it here. That's right, Janesville. I've seen your pontoons. You got a few too, okay? I'm not saying all pontoon owners are swingers. But all swingers do own a pontoon. It's a fact. But seriously, this is the most bipartisan issue since beer, and that should tell you something. So let's step back and take a look at the bigger picture, and that's trust. Okay, if a company is gonna come in here, if a company's gonna come into Wisconsin and ask us to sacrifice our land and our water and risk our power bills and give tax breaks, you gotta be able to trust that company. But most tech companies are already treating their machines better than they're treating us. Just look at all the lobbying that's gone against the protection of kids on social media. Social media companies have spent millions to kill legislation designed to protect our children online. How can we trust big tech with the most powerful technology in the world if we can't even trust them to protect our kids over profits? Most of us didn't ask for AI. Can it do some amazing things? Yeah. I'm not here to argue that. But without any guardrails, it can do bad things too. It's like fire, you know, it's neither good nor bad. But if big tech wants to build a fire in our house, I think we should at least ask them to make a fireplace first. Maybe one of those CO2 deals would be nice too. We need laws. We need laws because when you look at the headlines, it's clear that we got a long way to go. Leading AI models show up to 96% blackmail rate when their goals of existence are threatened, Anthropic study says. Elon Musk's XAI chatbot Grok faces ICO probe after allegedly creating sexual imagery of children. Another OpenAI researcher quits, claims AI labs are taking a very risky gamble with humanity amid the race towards AGI. AI chatbots confidently deliver bad cancer advice. That's the one thing they're supposed to be good at, you know? They're like, yeah, they'll help cure cancer. I guess not yet. A predator in your home. Mothers say chatbots encourage their sons to kill themselves. Elon Musk says there's only a 20% chance of annihilation with AI. What's only in front of that? It's like saying, yeah, you only got a 17% at Russian roulette. Give it a go. It's probably a different number. I just can't do math. A few slides too many. But look, my point is, it's a very narrow path. When you develop a more intelligent technology, it's a very narrow path to developing a more intelligent technology that is safe for humanity. The AI companies need these data centers, but maybe before we decide to completely change our communities, before we decide to give up the soul of our communities, these tech companies have to show us why we can trust them. I believe that we can build a Wisconsin better. I believe we can build Wisconsin better. I screwed up reading that the first time. There you go. I believe we can build Wisconsin better. I believe we can build a future that we actually want to live in. A future where security doesn't mean mass surveillance. A future where small town politicians listen to their citizens because they realize we are all on the same team. A future where if the world is truly going to be covered in data centers, as OpenAI's Sam Altman has said, the most treasured places in this world will be the ones that protected the gifts God gave us instead of the places that protected the profits of billionaires. Let's build Wisconsin better. Let's measure twice and cut once. And as always, go Packers. And
Thank you so much, Charlie. That was incredible. We appreciate you and your perspective. Our next presenter is Prescott Balch. Prescott is a recently retired technology executive. He spent his career developing software in the financial services industry, finishing his career at US Bank. After successfully resisting a data center proposal in his hometown of Caledonia, Wisconsin, he began helping communities across the upper Midwest to understand both risks and rewards with their proposals. His goal is to help communities make fully informed decisions. Prescott apologizes that he couldn't be here with us in person tonight, but he's prepared a short video to tell you why.
Hi, everybody. I'm Prescott Balch, and I'm sorry I'm not there, but I have a really good reason why I'm not there. I had a data center proposal show up. I worked hard to beat it. I found even bigger problems with local government. I got mad and I decided to run for village trustee. I won handily, but naturally my first board meeting is on April 21st. Hopefully this will do. More about me, I'm a retired technology executive. I spent 38 years in technology in a large corporate environment, mostly in financial services. I firmly believe we need data centers. I just think we need to find the right place for them. And to start this slide presentation, I want to talk about tax increment financing. And in short, don't do it. Both Beaver Dam and Port Washington did, and they got themselves into a situation where they cannot get tax levy benefit out of the deal without massive tax increase on their current residents, which of course no one wants to do. You would also need a legislative exemption, which is going to be hard to pull off considering the experience that those two towns had. And interestingly, your data center owner is going to have a massive tax windfall or reduction in taxes at TID closure, something you probably didn't plan for. It's a complex story and I'm happy to explain it to anyone. I would love to explain it to your local officials if they continue to leave the door open to this, but just don't do it. It's a financial disaster. Let's talk about rewards. These are undeniable. You're going to get eye-watering tax revenue. The smaller you are, the more eye-watering. You're going to get abundant construction jobs for years, and you're going to get some indirect economic benefit from that construction. But there is a myth to the direct jobs. I went out to Northern Virginia data and got a jobs number that translates into 18 jobs per facility. That's a statistically significant sample size, obviously. So if your data center developer is promising you more than, say, 20 jobs per facility, maybe even a little more than that because they're much bigger buildings, just ask, are they all local? Or are some of those that you're promising going to show up in other places like California and Texas and Chicago and so on? And if they say yes, they're all local, ask them why they're so much less efficient than Northern Virginia data centers. There's also a myth around economic benefit. A low number of jobs are easily absorbed by a local economy, even a small one the size of the town of Beloit or the greater Beloit area. The multiplier effect that you hear about where one job creates 3 more jobs, that only works when there's scale of hundreds or maybe thousands of jobs produced. Data centers also do not attract any supply chain businesses. They don't attract geographically neighboring businesses. This picture here shows West Des Moines, Iowa, a relatively booming town in other parts of West Des Moines. But near the data center, there's nothing except a golf course. And this is 15 years after the construction started. So there's really no ancillary benefit to the data centers. It's just a revenue stream, tax revenue stream, an eye-watering one. But nonetheless, that's about all they'll produce. That amount of eye-watering tax revenue, though, comes with another edge, and that's called financial concentration. I took the town of Beloit's total valuation, and with a beaver dam-sized campus, the valuation would increase 4 times. That creates for the town of Beloit an over-reliance on a single industry and a single taxpayer, and that has always ended poorly. It's only a matter of time before it does. And the massive total valuation increase means your levy will not grow for decades. And if this doesn't make sense to you, it will to your town officials who know how tax levies are calculated and what causes or what allows a tax levy to rise. But if you add that much valuation that quickly, your growth in tax levy will stop and it will be impossible to grow from that point on. Inflation will simply erode the purchasing power of your tax base. There's also a risk in the industry that we're overgrowing and overbuilding data centers. These circles are drawn to scale. $350 billion is the current size of the data center market. The currently proposed, the current proposals add up to $2.5 trillion. There's just no industry that grows this fast without making a mess. And technology can often create a mess. They did it with .com. It looks like they're doing it again with AI. And so ask yourself, are you prepared for valuation reductions if the industry really did overbuild? Are you prepared for a half-built building or a half-built campus? All good questions to ask, and if you do decide you want to move forward, these are some things that you'll want to protect yourself against. There's also a risk of obsolescence with technology. You all know this from your own technology in your houses and your cars, etc. in workplace. I know this from my career and in the data center space. There's no data center I was using 40 years ago that's still a data center today. They've all been repurposed for something else. And so what's your town's planning horizon? Do you care if it becomes obsolete in 30 years or 40 or 20 or 25? There's no data on lifespan data on hyperscale data centers. They're brand new. But hyperscale data centers are purpose-built. It's going to be hard to reuse them. Ask a commercial real estate expert in your area what could they possibly be used for, let alone at the scale. Trying to reuse, say, 3 million square feet of data center space in a purpose-built building, but also in a town that doesn't have a whole lot of attraction for commercial real estate might be an impossible task. And one unique way a town protected themselves against that, St. Lee Township, Michigan, required their developer to provide a destruction bond such that if the data center went empty for 5 consecutive years, that they could use the bond to destroy the building and return the property to an open field. Lastly, I'll mention construction because most communities are indeed getting this wrong. Zoning focuses on permanent use of the property, house height, building height, setbacks, noise, traffic, etc. And the construction nuisance is always greater than permanent use nuisance. But data centers are unique. They're unique in the length of time it takes to build them and the heavy industrial nature of their construction. This is not a house that's being built next door that's a mild annoyance for 3 months. It is an industrial construction activity that is next door to people for 7 to 10 years. So at what duration should the construction become a factor in the zoning? You can't just ignore that problem, particularly if you're putting this anywhere near where people live. You wouldn't put an oil refinery next to a school. Why would you put a heavy industrial 7-year-long construction site next to one? It's simple, and it makes sense when you think, when somebody brings it up to you, but our zoning regulations are simply not defined to accommodate this wide a difference between permanent use and construction use of the property, where construction use of the property has such long duration to it. So at the end of this, there's some links. I'll post the entire slideshow. I'll send the URL out, and you can see some of the source data that I have that I talked about during this proposal. I wish you and your community the best of luck trying to come to the right decision. My only hope is that this information can help provide full information to your local officials and your community so that the whole community can come together and make an fully informed decision and not one based on propaganda and too little information. Thank you very much.
All right, so next, I am thrilled to introduce a new friend and colleague, Lori Huntoon. She's a licensed professional geologist with over 25 years of experience in the environmental industry. She's the president and founder of Huntoon Environmental Risk Advisors, a local consulting firm focused on sustainability of water resources and the evaluation of environmental risks. And when we're talking about future projects like this, where water, land, and long-term impact are at the center, her expertise matters. So please join me in welcoming Lori Huntoon.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. So I am a hydrogeologist by training. I'm a professional geologist licensed by the state of Wisconsin. And I have over 30 years experience working with industry and municipalities and ensuring that they stay in compliance with regulations. So I'm going to give you a very quick overview tonight of water issues and how data centers, the nexus between water concerns and the data centers, especially the current proposals in Janesville and Beloit. So a really brief outline of what I'm going to talk about in the next 10 to 12 minutes. So fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be kind of quick. But the Rock River Watershed is a unique resource here in Wisconsin. Both proposals are planned for right along and adjacent to the Rock River. It's a vital habitat, use it for recreational uses. It's also a drinking water source. So we're going to talk about the local geology and the increased susceptibility for groundwater contamination, data center related issues, flood risks, and then other issues like heat islands and nuclear technologies. What I want you to leave today with is the fact that data centers are some of the most intense water demands are for data centers among all the industries. So they use a lot of water. Talk about that more. Okay, quick geology overview because I can talk about this for an hour. So here in Janesville, Floyd, we have sedimentary bedrock of dolomite and sandstone, overlaid by glacial deposits of sand and gravel. What does that mean? That means that in these beautiful ancient river valleys of the Rock River, you have very, very permeable sand and gravel that's very susceptible to groundwater contamination. The river is shown, not exactly in scale, I apologize, but it's about 12 feet deep. The ancient river valleys are about 400 feet deep in places and about 400 feet wide. That's a lot of beautiful sand and gravel, why your water tastes so great, but it's also very susceptible to any kind of contamination. So data centers have large cooling systems, and they have servers, a lot of buildings and servers, and they need to use water or power to cool them. The industry admits that there's a kind of a reverse relationship. If you want to use less water, it's probably going to use a lot more power. If you want to use less power, you're going to use more water. So and we'll talk about the closed system, but then that's going to be less water, but have a lot more power. So large facilities can consume millions of gallons of water per day. Where does that water come from? It might come from shallow and deep water wells that are in that ancient rock valley. Might be from the municipal water supply for the town or the city, but do they have enough capacity for that kind of water? And are they going to have to add more wells for their supply? And then it could be direct withdrawal from the river. Total water demand could easily exceed the available supply. And data center operations can affect river levels, aquatic habitat, and nearby properties. Cumulative impacts really need to be evaluated. For instance, Alliant Energy, which I'm an Alliant customer and I appreciate Alliant, but they recently had 4 permits approved for high capacity wells in the town of Beloit, right across the river, only a couple miles, not even a couple miles from the proposed site. And those additional wells that were approved would be for 3 shallow wells that might be up to 5 million gallons per day each, and a deep well of 2 million gallons per day each. That's 17 million gallons of capacity that's been approved by DNR right across the river. And is that to help the data center, or is the data center going to use additional from that? We don't have the answers right now. That's the unknowns that we really would like to have more information about. Specific data center issues, we have water withdrawal volumes, thermal pollution, because when it goes back into the river or wherever the water goes after we use it, oftentimes it's higher temperature, it's going to really impact ecosystems. You have contaminant discharge, which could affect water quality. You have the groundwater impacts we mentioned, most likely your shallow wells in the neighborhood. As you get that cone of depression when your wells pulling the water, you're probably going to see a lot of those wells go dry. You have impervious surfaces and increased stormwater. And then also, the big thing is the regulatory gaps in enforcement. These are being fast-tracked so quickly that oftentimes they aren't following through with all of the different regulatory requirements that all of your other industries in the county have had to do. So what is a hyperscale system? It's kind of it's not really a definition, but in the industry, it's generally defined as 10,000 square feet in size with over 5,000 servers. Miles of piping, thousands of valves and joints, and massive volumes of fluid. You can imagine that there's a lot of, when I was working a lot in the petroleum industry, all of those corners, when pipe turns, you're gonna have a lot of potential for leaks along these lines. A small leak that goes unnoticed could make a huge environmental difference over time. As the facilities get larger, these risks of leaks and releases increase. The increased number of those loops, again, more failure points, and it's really hard to monitor a system that has miles of piping. So how much is 2 million gallons per day? We've heard 2 million gallons per day is what the December, the developer told the city of Beloit that they expected. It might be a smaller system as well, but how much would 2 million gallons be? If you take a look here, Beloit Memorial Hospital is about 50,000 gallons a day. Mercy and Janesville is about 75,000 gallons a day. 5,000 apartments would be about 500. 5,000 single-family homes is estimated to be about the same amount as a data center that's using 2 million gallons per day. In 2024, the city of Beloit municipal system had 7,000 or 7 million gallons per day for the year. So that's more than a fourth of what Beloit uses now. There's been a lot of talk about closed loop systems, and it's true, they use a lot less water. Again, remember, with less water comes more power. And they also have this, the closed loop has a lot of issues with it specifically. They use a lot of glycol, a lot of different chemicals, and we'll talk about that in another slide. But when they talk about 7,000 gallons per day, that's not the indirect use of water. You have water being used for evaporation blowdown, if that's a system, humidification of those internal components. As you can imagine, you have a lot of static electricity in those data centers. Maintenance flushing and periodic water replacement, on-site power generation, especially for backup, and then the amount of water they're going to use in the construction phase. So this indirect water needs to be understood as well. And also, because you're going to have a lot of heat given off in these closed loop systems, because you can imagine they're cooling down these servers, you're going to have localized heat islands potentially, and microclimate shifts, especially near rivers. And where are both of these sites recommended? Right along the Rock River. And I don't spend much time here, but the flood maps developed by FEMA demonstrate that there's flood hazard areas on and adjacent to both sites. So quick look there, but then we have pictures from just the storm that we had just a few days ago. A severe thunderstorm indeed, but nothing like the recent record events that we've had along the Rock River. And you can see here, this was the next day, we had flooding on the site. This is the town of Beloit site. And this is when you have wetlands, you have agricultural land, and you have a non-metallic mining. Now imagine when a significant amount of that property is covered with multiple buildings, multiple paved areas. Now your flooding potential is much higher. Potential contaminants in data centers can include hydrofluorocarbons, which are used in cooling systems, PFAS, which is your per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. Don't get me started because I could talk about it for an hour. And there's a gas called perfluorohexane, which is 10,000 times more potent as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Common additives would be the corrosion inhibitors and biocide. And then you also have the fuel and chemical storage risks because you have to have that backup power. That's always going to have some risks. And then you have glycol, the biggest vulnerability with those closed loop systems. They can use tens to hundreds of thousands of gallons of glycol. Glycol is very mobile in soil, goes through the groundwater very quickly, and when it gets into the water, it takes away the oxygen and impacts those ecosystems. And then the next generation of power, and I'm not against nuclear. I spent the last 8 years working on DOE sites, but it's something that we need to be aware of, is that Meta recently signed agreements with 2 companies, TerraPower and Oklo, and they are looking at the future, and the future is going to be small nuclear reactors on these properties to power data centers. Now, I'm not saying that it would necessarily be one here, but that's the future. That's where they're looking at. These data centers are going to get more sophisticated. The data centers are going to get larger. They're going to need more energy, and they're already building them. The picture down below is one in Wyoming. It's already being constructed. They're fast tracking these things so quickly. And we're all told if somebody wants you to sign something quick, right, you pause. So what we want is transparency. Current regulations leave communities without information. If you're hooked up to the municipal system, there are no reporting requirements for the state on the water that you use. The City of Racine recently had to be sued in order to give up the projected water use for the facility that was going in there. Development plans often get fast-tracked before water studies are even completed. Minimal information is being disclosed. It's very difficult for us to really truly assess what's the specific risk for each data center unless we know what we're dealing with. I'm not against data centers. My clients are industry, municipalities, but I do want to know what the details are so we can adequately figure out what the risks might be. And if they do go in, then let's at least know that we can curtail the issues that are of concern to people, the lighting, the noise, the groundwater contamination. If you're gonna do it right. Thank you. So what information can you ask for? Here are some questions you can ask developers, local officials. Oh, that wasn't the 5 minute? No. Oh, dang, okay. Really quick. All right, what's the design water use and volume? What's the cooling system? What are the plans for discharge? To pull the water out, where's the water gonna go? What are the plans for power as the water impact system has been completed? The non-metallic mine had to put together a reclamation plan. What is that going to look like? Is it going to differ from the one that they have now? What will those changes look like? Has an environmental impact statement been developed? Because this triggers all kinds of requirements for one. What agencies are involved in reviews? Has a contingency plan for spills and floods been prepared? And who pays for monitoring and oversight of cheating? Sorry, Nikki. Other reasonable community requests include your community monitoring rights, emergency response plans, enforcing permit conditions, your independent water impact studies, assurances of protection for natural resources. The town of Beloit has 18 threatened endangered species, or maybe that's 18 birds of conservation concern. There's a lot in both categories. Eagles and the rusty patch bumblebee habitat covers the entire proposed site. Setback required from the river and demonstration of full-scale cumulative demands has been evaluated. This is your community. These are your resources. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lori. That was some great information. And next up, we have Dr. Brittany Keys. Dr. Brittany Keys is a physical therapist and the Clean Air Policy Manager with the statewide nonprofit Healthy Climate Wisconsin. Brittany is a former Beloit City Councilor and lives in the city of Beloit with her family. For the past 5 years, she has been advocating for adequate air monitoring and against new large pollution sources in Rock County. Over the past 2 years with Healthy Climate Wisconsin, she has expanded her advocacy across the state of Wisconsin because clean air saves lives. Let's welcome Dr. Brittany Keys.
Thank you, Cassandra, and for that lovely introduction. And thank everyone, I want to thank everyone for being here. This is a super important topic. I'm grateful to engage in conversation, looking forward to the panel discussion and being part of this panel. Healthy Climate Wisconsin, as you said, is a statewide nonprofit of doctors, nurses, therapists, public health professionals working to address and prevent pollution of our land, air, and water in order to improve the health of our patients, communities, and families. And that's why I'm here to speak to the public health impacts of hyperscale data centers. As an organization, we recognize that data centers pose significant risks to public health when it comes to pollution, impacts to our energy system, and impacts to our climate. As an organization, we also know that Wisconsin is not protected or in a position to protect us from these risks. This should make us all pause, from decision makers to community members. Wisconsin is not equipped with the current regulatory system to protect us from the impacts of these large projects. The most acute concern and risk comes from air pollution. This is in the form of nitrogen oxides, fine particulate matter, or PM 2.5, which is little soot particles. These particles, it's difficult because they're too small for the human eye to see. They're smaller than a grain of sand, smaller than a piece of hair. And they're so small, you can breathe them in, and they can negatively impact almost every system in our body throughout the lifespan. This pollution comes from on-site diesel generators, which when they burn, they result in known carcinogens, and the off-site energy production from burning coal or gas to meet their high energy needs. Now you'll see short-term effects from short-term exposure from coughing, irritation, eyes, nose, throat, lungs, but it's really the long-term exposure that's most concerning, contributing to chronic illnesses such as stroke, heart attack, lung disease, cancers, diabetes, and poor birth outcomes. So looking just at the on-site diesel generators, Clean Wisconsin recently issued a report looking at the back of diesel generators at the Port Washington site. And what they found, just from the emissions that are being permitted to pollute, so the DNR is well aware, and they're saying it's okay, those emissions could cause up to $1.3 million in health-related harms every year. And that could be preventable. Again, this is the current regulatory system giving a preliminary determination that that is okay. It's also important to appreciate the harms of the off-site burning of gas and coal to power these. And yes, the individuals and the neighbors to these plants are at highest risk, but these pollutants have cross-state dispersion, and we don't breathe in a vacuum. So the harms that, it's important that we look at the cumulative impacts, both from, right, what's in our county to what's in our state, but also appreciating how this data center boom, which is resulting in more coal plants being online longer, more gas being built out, how that pollution really is harming us all. There was a study in 2025 that brought together all of the predicted pollution from the on-site diesel generators for hyperscale data centers and for all of the power plant pollution to power them. And what they found and predicted is by 2030, that this pollution from hyperscale data centers in the US could be responsible for 600,000 cases of asthma, 1,300 premature deaths, resulting in a public health burden of $20 billion. So when we're looking at the costs and the benefits of these projects, what are we weighing and what are we prioritizing? It's also important to know that Rock County isn't coming in without any air pollution. Our highest industrial polluter self-reports that starting in 2018, when they expanded Alliant Energy, expanded West Riverside Energy Center, the emissions have gone up and have not stopped. An independent study from Boston University looked and identified increased risk of cancer for neighbors surrounding that plant as it is, without the addition of their current expand fossil fuel proposal, as well without the data center. All right, moving on to water. So Lori did an excellent job diving into water concerns, but from a public health perspective, we're concerned of the volume of water use and water security. What's happening with those wells? We're concerned about thermal pollution, chemical pollution, increased nitrate concentrations, and hydrology changes. And as we've heard, just during the construction phase of the data center in Beaver Dam, we are already seeing wells go dry. We're already seeing changes in creek flow and creeks running dry. And this is with the DNR permits and the DNR being aware. When it comes to sound and light pollution, the American Speech and Language Hearing Association set that threshold of potential hearing loss right around 85 decibels. And it is known that the sound pollution from these hyperscale data centers can reach up to 98, so it surpasses the threshold, acknowledging that the closer you are, the more significant the impact. And when it comes to light pollution, again, it is not just during operation. These are images from the construction phase of Port Washington. We know that light pollution is bad for the health of humans, and it is also harmful to nature, harming migratory birds and pollinators. All right, so we know that data centers pose significant risks to public health from pollution, and then we have energy costs and increased energy burden. Clean Wisconsin did another report September of last year, looking at the amount of energy that would be consumed by 2 AI data centers in Wisconsin, and found that these 2 data centers would use more energy than all homes in the state combined. Where are our utilities going to get that? And how are they going to pay for it? So from our Alliant Energy, they are committed to customers. You will not pay for new large energy user growth. Many folks have gotten emails from the current Alliance Wisconsin president reinforcing such. Also wanting to note that Rebecca Volk is the former Public Service Commission chair, which is the regulatory agency in Wisconsin tasked to regulate the utility monopolies. And again, they said that we will not have any impacts, but you know, if it's not written, it's not real. And this is the application they submitted to our state regulator, telling us how much we would be impacted. And it took the administrative law judge to get them to reapply with fewer redactions. And we still don't have all the information. But who profits and who pays? Well, Alliant Energy has made record profits for the last 2 quarters. First quarter 2026, largely due to the influx of data centers, including the one in construction in Beaver Dam. There's a flow chart of how the financials flows, and the majority shareholders are the same for Alliant as Meta. And this is a public health issue. If you have to choose between filling your prescription, paying your rent, or paying your energy bill, this causes undue mental and physical stress and negatively impacts your health that should be prevented and protected by state decision makers and regulators. Data centers pose a significant risk to public health, also with climate impacts. And we've all been, this last couple of weeks is not normal. We've seen more tornado warnings the first part of April than normally all month or really all season. Health is impacted by climate change, and it is accelerating. And this also comes in the forms of increased heat illness, increased Lyme disease, increased rates of from more tick bites, and then also the costs associated with these extreme weather events. And so how are our regulators and how are utilities responding? Are they cleaning up the air for us? Or are they decreasing emissions? They are delaying their coal plant closures and building out more fossil fuels to meet this need for data centers. Alliant has delayed the coal plant closure in Columbia County, Sheboygan County, and they're looking to build out more fossil fuel infrastructure in Beloit. And then the other concern that was noted is that these data centers are becoming the epicenter of their own heat islands. And to the extent of raising surface temperatures 3 to almost 16 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's not just if you live in its backyard. This goes out almost 6 miles. And this is very concerning because in Wisconsin, with the increased temperature trends that we're seeing, in more extreme heat events, heat is the #1 cause of death with severe weather events in Wisconsin. So again, what do we need? We need more research. So call all your research buddies and tell all the folks to start investing in this. Because again, these projects are going fast and furious, and our decision makers don't have the information needed to appreciate the long-term effects on community members. We also need life cycle assessments on data centers, from power generation to hardware disposal. We need our decision makers to appreciate what communities are going to be most impacted. This is a great tool from UW, the Area Deprivation Index. We really need to appreciate which census blocks, which neighbors we need to be lifting up, and how could these projects be impacting them. Final calls to action for community members, elected officials, decision makers. What we need is to ensure that to power these data centers, it needs to be with non-emitting sources. Our air is polluted enough already. We need to demand that they replace diesel generators with battery storage for non-emitting energy. We need to use advanced cooling technologies to reduce water use and recycle the waste heat. We need to mandate public reporting of data center pollution. We need transparency. Yeah. Greater transparency and stricter standards would hold operators accountable and encourage cleaner practices. And we also need to position new data centers away from populated areas and areas that are already overburdened with pollution. And that is Rock County. Again, I'm very grateful for this opportunity and look forward to the panel Q&A.
Thank you, Brittany, thank you. Okay, so this person has a pretty significant intro. Super excited to hear her speak tonight. I'm here to introduce Britt Bumpus. She brings real-world experience across multiple industries with a background in finance, insurance, technology, and public policy. She grew up in a large agriculture and energy industries in California and later studied at Hunter College in New York City. We're seeing the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis really shaped her focus on risk, accountability, and how institutions operate. Throughout her career, she's worked with major financial and insurance organizations across the country, giving her a practical understanding of how compliance is supposed to work and what happens when it doesn't. She was also recruited by Meta, where she gained insight into governance and internal controls while working alongside teams in machine learning and AI, areas that are now facing increasing regulatory scrutiny. So after moving to Beaver Dam this year, Britt has become dedicated to helping residents and local leaders better understand the substantial risks of working with trillion-dollar companies who operate in ways where regulatory compliance takes the backseat to financial gain. So please join me in welcoming Britt Bumpus.
All right, thank you so much for coming here. I wanted to throw this quote up. I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. If you're a Star Wars nerd, you might recognize this quote. This basically sums up how I feel about how a lot of you came to be here tonight. Many of you are here tonight because you heard about this event on Facebook. So I just think this quote speaks for itself. The number one comment I see online is, why are you using Facebook if you don't support Meta or their data centers? It's a lot more complicated than that, but what I will say is I went to work for Meta because there are people that work there that want to do good and they want communities to come together. There isn't very many of them left. Facebook helps families feel connected from thousands of miles away. It also helps us remember memories of loved ones who are no longer here. Along the way, the soul of what Facebook was kind of got lost and became this twisted nightmare of algorithms pushing nauseating AI videos and fraudulent ads. Doing business with Meta, what your community needs to know so you don't get Beaver Damned. My goal in short is, in the short amount of time that we have, is to help this community and others like it learn from the mistakes of Beaver Dam. So some other people have touched on this. What is a data center? Every time you check your email, every time you ask Google, what's the weather going to be? Which doesn't really work here in Wisconsin, I've realized. Or if you spend 45 minutes trying to reset your password only for the website to tell you your new password cannot be the same as your old password. All of that happens in a data center. If you remember that utility closet at work 10 years ago that had a slight humming and was always locked, it's like that. but several dozen football fields larger, and it's packed floor to ceiling with computer equipment that runs so hot it needs its own cooling system. And that cooling system drinks water the way some of us drink coffee in the morning, constantly, desperately, and in qualities that would concern your doctor. You can think of data centers also as the world's largest filing cabinet, except instead of paperwork, it holds your photos, videos, text messages, and every email your grandmother has forwarded you since 2009. So, why are data centers being built here in Wisconsin? Wisconsin has everything Meta was looking for: cheap land, lots of water, and a local government so excited about $1 billion that nobody thought to ask any questions. The land is cheap, they offer tax abatements, there's also big tax incentives. Obviously, the power is cheaper for them, as we are now learning through some of the deals and agreements that Alliant is making. Water is also plentiful here, but it's not endless. Meta made $62 billion in profit just last year, but they paid a federal tax rate of 3.5%, and then came to Wisconsin with their hand out and said, "Please, sir, may I have some more?" Look at the city of Beaver Dam. Meta just couldn't resist when they saw they had wide open spaces, tons of water, and the town was so nice that they knew nobody would notice when they began to take it. Meta is planning to spend $500 billion on data centers over the next 3 years, and they have their sights on your communities. In the wonderful world of corporate accounting, spending that kind of money means big write-ups. So the same company that already figured out how to turn $62 billion into profit into a 3.5% tax bill is promising towns a steady stream of future revenue. They pinky promise to pay their taxes. Some people will argue that once the construction is done, the write-offs stop and the tax dollars start rolling in. But what they're not telling you is servers inside that building need to be replaced every 3 to 5 years. The batteries, the cooling systems, networking equipment, all of it gets swapped out on a rolling schedule for the entire life of the building. Meta's accountants don't go home after the ribbon cutting. They just switch from writing off construction costs to writing off the upgrade costs. It's not a one-time tax dodge. It's a subscription to the tune of millions of dollars a year. The data center in Beaver Dam isn't even operational, and yet residents are already being impacted. I have spoken to families whose wells have gone dry or whose well water has an increasingly amount of heavy chemicals and metals, making it no longer safe to drink. Some of you may have already seen those stories on the news, and I think a lot of them were mentioned already. Construction just started only last year, and even though residents have carefully documented their issues and reached out to every government entity they can think of for help, they still haven't been able to get answers. Just this past Friday, Representative Mark Bourne said on 95.3 WBEV radio's community comment that he hasn't heard about wells going dry. However, that's an outright lie, because the other week, a Beaver Dam resident was able to secure an audio recording of Mark Bourne and Matt Sexton, Meta's regional manager for community development, discussing those very wells going dry. I reached out to Matt to clarify what the process is for citizens who have a concern, but he has not replied. If our leaders are bold enough to lie, if every government body is pointing the finger at another, what is the point of regulations? And if the only mechanism to ensure they are followed is a fine, how do we ensure a $1 trillion company has any incentive to follow them?
Yeah.
Meta has a history of ignoring laws and regulations in favor of profits. An internal memo recently said that Meta understands about 10% of their ad revenue is from fraud or scams. They spend billions of dollars in fines, and to them, it's just the cost of doing business. When I was working at Meta, someone once asked Mark Zuckerberg about a $700 million fine. And his response was to laugh and say, "We have plenty of money." Meta is gearing up to make a huge marketing push because they're going to try and convince people that these data centers make us safer. They're going to say they're a good investment for your community and for the country. But meta data centers are not the same as data centers that are running AI models to cure cancer, which apparently don't do a good job. They aren't housing massive amounts of financial data for banks. They're doing lots of other, sometimes nefarious things. In order for you to understand why Meta is betting everything right now on these data centers, you have to understand that something has fundamentally changed recently at Meta. Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp, those are Meta products. But now you're the product. Your children are the product. For years, companies sold you the product, but Meta's current internal evaluations have stated that they're betting that we're all going to become the product. And this is why. Meta intends to use real-time AI facial recognition to track you with or without your knowledge or permission. This isn't sci-fi, it is here. You can buy these at Best Buy, Costco, Walmart. People don't understand that someone can wear these when they are going to your child's school. What about the nurse taking care of you? Many companies have not even created policies related to these AI glasses, and they're already on the market. Not only that, but these do break several state and federal privacy laws, but nothing is being done about it because AI. The audio and video that these things capture is a massive data suck. That is why Meta is trying to build these data centers so quickly. Meta spent an estimated $13.35 billion in fines since 2016. You know, when you were a kid and you did something wrong, your parents would ground you, take away your allowance, and send you to your room? That only works if the kid actually cares. If that kid is sitting on $77 billion in cash and has 200 lawyers on retainer, grounding him isn't really a punishment, it's a scheduling conflict. So where do we go from here? Well, my hope is that after today, Meta decides to abandon the pursuit of a data center here. But if they don't, or if another company decides to swoop in, the citizens here need to unite, and they need to learn from the mistakes of Beaver Dam. You must demand at least a community benefits agreement that ensures citizens are protected and they have a real path to get resolutions to any issues that may arrive. The biggest thing here, pay your taxes. These companies need to start paying taxes so that cash flows right away. Prescott briefly touched on the fact that a lot of these communities have created tax increment districts where those taxes do not directly go to citizens. It's basically going right back into these tech companies' pockets. We also need to demand real transparency. You need to include local residents in all planning, permitting processes, not just the government officials. If you really want to be a community partner, these companies need to come to the community. They also need to allow independent third parties to publish environmental impact data, including air emissions, water usage, energy usage, and all of the related costs. These agreements need to protect your community with pre-negotiated remedies, including legal action for damages, clawbacks of tax incentives, and a dedicated authority and process to assist residents with resolving any issues related to the construction or operation of the data center. If commitments are not being met, or if the data center is being used for activities that violate state or federal laws, that development agreement should terminate with penalties. You need to demand real penalties from these companies because right now, as you've heard, those government entities and the regulating bodies are not doing it for you. So it has to be you. You guys have to raise your voices. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited for Charlie being here, for Brittany. I'm so sorry.
Lori.
Lori, thank you. For everyone that is here, I do appreciate you coming out. I'll be excited to take any of your questions, and I hope that we can have something positive come out of tonight, because we really, your community needs this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brett. And everybody, do you want to just take a deep breath? We've ingested a lot of information so far tonight. We're getting ready to switch gears because this is where it becomes about you. Your questions, your concerns, and the stuff that still doesn't add up. Let's be real, if you don't have questions, you haven't been paying attention tonight, guys. So nothing's off the table. Let's have some real conversations. And to keep this moving, I'm going to welcome Charlie Barron back up to lead our Q&A.
Give them all a round of applause, guys, for everything. And with that, so anyone got any questions or no? I'm gonna run around with the mic. I just want to do a quick action alert. As you keep hearing thematically, this is gonna be a very comprehensive process. We need to comprehensively come together as community. One of those opportunities is those petitions. Make sure you look at those, sign where you can, get involved where you can. Another one, Esther came with some UW resources, is compiling community stories, because our experience is extremely important in this. If you'd like to get involved with that, please talk to me. Wisconsin Conservation Voters is doing a more comprehensive documentary about utilities, health harms, energy burdens with those damages. Nels, are you here? Nels Lindquist is here with that. And if you'd like to be involved with that, please talk to him. I'm just running to get the mics. Hands up. I don't.
Yeah, this might be a question for Lori. First of all, I want to thank you guys for all the comprehensive information. A lot of my questions, were touched on tonight. But Lori, you were talking about the risks of flooding and leaks, and with the increase in wildfires in Wisconsin, I'm wondering about the dangers of fire and if those chemicals are aerosolized up into the air, and whether our fire infrastructure could handle a fire of that scale at a facility like that.
Is it on? Yep, it is. Yeah, perfect. Thank you for the question. So the contamination, again, it depends. It's very difficult to really assess what all the risks are without knowing what kind of system. Is it a closed loop with 70,000? Is it a traditional with 2 million gallons? But certainly the contaminants that could go into the river, into the groundwater, and other surface waters, some of that is volatile and it can go into the air. A lot of it might go into the air while it's on site. So some contamination cooling systems can be released right there.
Yeah, I'm asking because I lived in California for 20 years and there was a lithium battery storage site that started on fire and it contaminated the farmland around it. And so those crops were destroyed and that land was contaminated after that fire.
So you asked about fire. That's not my specialty, but certainly we all are familiar with the fire that happened at Chemrock a few years ago.
Yeah.
Different facility, of course. But again, when you have something like that, an unexpected event that could be a fire, a lot of those components inside those server buildings, all of that, when it's burning, it will definitely give off some contamination. That's not my area of expertise, but definitely, and that would impact potentially impact the fields nearby, the homes and residences, the animals, the river. And again, it's all right. It's the Rock River. I mean, it's such a fabulous resource. So those are definitely a concern. Thank you for your question.
This might actually be more of a question for Prescott. So I don't know if anyone up there knows the answer to this. It's specifically with the Beaver Dam data center. I know with a lot of the possible benefits of the data centers. They talk about the temporary construction jobs and the permanent jobs. Specifically for like those temporary construction jobs, does anyone happen to know who actually was the contractors that actually built it? Part of the reason I asked, doing just a very simple quick Google search off of Meta's own AI generated result said it was actually a contractor out of Minnesota. Which also makes me wonder then, if that's the case, are they gonna be importing other builders as well? I wasn't sure if anyone happened to know any of that information offhand.
I do know that it is a builder from Minnesota, and having spoken to several of the workers on site, many of them are driving 4 hours each way because Meta was so afraid of the pushback and, you know, leaks or information getting out there. So they specifically hired contractors and are paying for these individuals to drive 8 hours a day. They're coming usually from up north, closer over to Minnesota. And so they have done this quite intentionally. It is actually now more expensive to get a hotel room in Beaver Dam than it is in some places in Chicago. Correct. Many of the workers are not even going to be local for the construction phase.
They will impact our local economy though. My question is, if Britt, you talked a little bit about this, about things to ask like a community impact fund. Do you, and Prescott also talked about that, do you have any examples of cities that have done it right or close to right that have gotten the right protections in place?
I know that certain cities across the country have been able to fight for pieces of that. Some of the cities, several cities actually in Texas fought for a gradual increase in tax income, specifically where it started at 20% instead of like, you know, not paying taxes for 5 or 10 years, it would start at 20%, and then as things progress to increase that. But as far as specifics on cities that have been able to negotiate those things, it's just kind of few and far between. We were just picking up on different things that other cities have asked and then saying, you know, collectively, these are the things that we can potentially, hopefully ask for.
Read today that there's something called Project Suncatcher from Google Research aiming to build space-based AI data centers powered by solar energy. They plan to launch constellations of satellites equipped with Google tensor processing units to harness continuous solar energy, aiming to overcome Earth's energy constraints and scale machine learning with prototypes coming out next year. What have you heard about that, and can that supersede what we're talking about today and make it obsolete like cassette tapes?
I mean, I think the truth of it is that technology rises exponentially. So that nobody really knows the answer. I mean, there could be a breakthrough in something, and you can imagine today's technology being obsolete in a very short period of time. Again, I think this is like sort of the area of unknowns, but there's a lot of development going on continuously. So who knows if, you know, it could just be a really big bowling alley in a couple of years. Should be on, honestly, maybe we just make it a bowling alley now, you know. Winters are long, you get 600 people going bowling. So it's stretching out those rotator cuffs, guys.
That's why we went back to the moon, right? To see if we could get data centers on there. And we need a lot of research, yes, to appreciate the full impacts of the hyperscale data centers on Earth. And if you look at the space junk that's been polluted already, it's like, what are we gonna do to space? And what is it gonna cost us? And how long is it gonna be till we know the long-term impacts? And will it really be worth it?
Hi, this is Rory. I'm a hunter. What's it gonna do to our species, our deer for drinking water, for fish, our geese, our ducks? can we tell if it's got contamination in the meat itself?
Okay, so good question. What is it gonna do to the species? First of all, again, it really, a lot of it is depending on, we don't know what size. We do know that surrounding the area and for quite a distance, there'll be, depending on what the contaminant is or the impact is, there will be negative impacts that have a radius scale outward. It will certainly impact the animals that are living in that area now. We have 36 or 38 acres of wetlands are on the current town of Beloit proposed site. And that's from the study that the developer had done by Stantec. So we know those will all have to be, relocated, they'll have to go somewhere else. We know that there's going to be impacts to habitats and contamination. Right now, we aren't testing animal tissue. We do have, there is ability to test tissue for PFAS. You can also, all of you could get tested for PFAS. And, that might be something that would be down the line. But right now, there's really no widespread sampling to know when we're, except for fish. I will say that fish are being tested right now for PFAS. PFAS, my favorite, the per polyfluoroalkyl substances, they're what you know as forever chemicals. Okay, those are the forever chemicals you hear about in the news. They're very hard to break down. It's a fluorine carbon bond, and about that, that's all you can get from a geologist as far as chemistry. But anyway, so they are testing fish right now and kind of giving alerts like how many fish you should eat. But as far as the deer, geese, I don't know of any testing that's being done on those, and that's a really good question.
Because, because they go down south, their geese and their ducks and all of it. Are they bringing stuff up from down south, bring it up here? Are they, then they pass it on to their young ones? And how many millions of geese and ducks are hatched every year? They're getting it all, so are we even good to hunt?
Exactly, because we know that what they eat, what their prey eat, goes all the way down, right? And we see that with a lot of sicknesses that are going around now. So we don't know what we don't know.
Right, it's just like, the stuff that's in the air it's coming from goes into the crops. And then eat corn, and then it's an non-stop.
Exactly, that circle of life, and we need to be looking at it. Good point.
The government's trying to take away from our food.
Good luck this hunting season, by the way.
Thanks.
I'd like to, first of all, just tell everybody how much I appreciate people that are involved with this activity. But one of the things that seems to be happening in my mind, to me, it's like someone who has an issue with self-confidence. It seems like people are trying to find ways to implement these data centers because they feel they have to. I personally don't feel that way. I love the environment. I love having water to drink. And although I'm not an expert and I haven't done tons of research, I cannot find a reason that we would want to give up what we are being, what we're expected to give up. For these people to come in and take our water and take our land and take our air, and that we should help kill ourselves by giving them permission to do it. I would really like to know what, someone mentioned that one of the panelists mentioned that there's benefits to this. I don't see it. Can someone tell me what it is?
I think one of the biggest benefits that was sold to the Beaver Dam community at least was that it would bring other industry. It would bring other jobs would come afterwards. And that is yet to be decided, but I do know that as someone who was recently house hunting in and around Beaver Dam, a lot of people are selling their homes. There is a whole generation that is moving out of Beaver Dam, and those homes that are being sold are, unfortunately, they're gonna stay on the market. There is a whole area of Beaver Dam that is also going to have a large, Alliant is going to be running from one side of Beaver Dam, pretty much all the way on the north side of Beaver Dam Lake, into Randolph, into Portage. So anyone who is looking to move, I would not suggest it. There is a lot of construction that's gonna be happening, and there's also a lot more that we don't even know about, that hasn't been talked about. I don't know if anyone else has heard, Beaver Dam actually approved a second data center recently. So, it's unfortunately, once one goes in, if you look at the history of metadata centers, it's usually 3 to 5. They'll have about a couple of edge data centers. So when your city council says, oh, it's just this little one, don't believe them. And I don't know why they would believe any of these companies, because it's never just one.
Hi, thank you guys for coming and giving us information about all of this. And just as a regular Joe Schmo and getting information about the data centers, because I didn't know how toxic they were involved there. Us as an audience, but us as a community, what is our next step? What do we do so we don't just leave and get back in our daily lives and kind of have it up the side and forget? What can we do now? What can we do when we go home?
Excellent question, and we are gonna review this before you all go out the door, but we have a call to action. There's a half sheet that hopefully everyone picked up. One, we're gonna engage at 3 different levels. First, we're going to circulate a petition, get as many signatures as we can to pressure the governor to issue an emergency order to pause. We need protections, right? We need this to pause. We need to learn more and make sure the protections are in place. So we're first sign the petition before you go. Then we need transparency. And so from the county level to the township level, we need to work with our local elected officials to work to make sure that we ban NDAs at the local level. And then continue to work with them to determine what our values are, what we need to protect, how we're gonna protect, and then get more protections on the books. And so stay involved. We've got Rock County Neighbors for Responsible Development. We are going to be growing. We want you to be involved. Sign up on the email and then keep engaging, because we need everybody. They've got big pockets, but we've got a room full of people.
I keep hearing about moratoria on AI and data centers. I was just wondering what the latest is about those going forward until these areas are regulated, because they're not. There's no regulation right now. Data centers are going forward without anything. AI is for sure unregulated. I just wondered what's coming up as far as that.
I would say, I know Maine just passed a statewide moratorium on data centers, which is impressive. And outside of that, there's a few other states that have done a few things. You got those? You guys can't tell, I'm not the expert up here. I tell jokes about deer.
I do know there has been at the city levels, some ability for residents to fight back, some ability for residents to actually temporarily halt construction of data centers that are full-fledged. And one of those things, actually, the city of Beaver Dam hasn't even become aware that we are going to be doing, and that is we we are creating a task force. So a hunter mentioned about, you know, the impacts of local wildlife. Well, we don't have that impact information unless we have people out there taking pictures, taking photos, taking videos. So, you know, I guess this puts Meta on notice that they're gonna be having thousands of residents all over. Obviously not trespassing, but we're definitely going to be stepping up the game as far as holding them accountable, taking pictures, videos when they shouldn't be running diesel generators at certain times or light pollution. That's gonna be the biggest thing as far as these communities that already have data centers, but holding your representatives accountable is also a very big one. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, Mark Warren flat out said that he hadn't heard anything about wells going dry when we actually have an audio recording. So that's where we really need to make sure that residents are speaking up, they're speaking out, that you're coming to events like this. You're making comments on Facebook saying, I was there, I saw it, you know, I heard this. Because all of that is going to be community interaction, and we need this to be a positive force out there in there. This isn't just a big negative, you know, anti-technology. We're protecting the community. That's what it needs to stay.
And at the state level, the Assembly and Senate, they've gavelled out for the year. So the majority in both the Assembly and Senate have gavelled out, so there's nothing that's gonna move forward at the state level to protect us until next year. Unless the governor calls an emergency session and the majority party is so moved to bring it to the floor. And I will say there were a number of bills that were brought up, and as an organization, Healthy Climate Wisconsin appreciated all the efforts. There was efforts from both sides, but just wanted to flag and did at a Senate session, committee session, that they all did fall short of adequately protecting us, and we absolutely need more. So again, the moratorium, we need time to study this, as well as to ensure that our regulators are set up to protect us and enforce those protections.
Now, they'll also just throw in the meantime, Port Washington residents put together they put a referendum on the ballot that says any TID over $10 million, the residents have to approve. Honestly, I think any data center should be up to the residents to vote if they want it or not. And maybe there's some kind of legislation or direct legislation that could be done in this community. Again, I tell jokes about deers and ducks and fish, and these are your experts in that. Oh, yes, sorry, I'm doing a bad job. You got a question, or are we doing hot mic? Yeah, we'll do the line. We got 3 more. Okay, got it. There's a line over there. My bad.
Hi, my name is Maddie. Sorry. Hi, my name is Maddie and I'm 9 years old. Is it safe to live 1 mile from where the data center is gonna be?
Oh, geez. 9 years old, guys, give it a big number. You're doing such a huge thing just coming out here and speaking, so thank you so much. Thank you. Expert.
This is why I moved here. We already have too much air pollution in Rock County and our babies are sick. My Beloit has some of the highest asthma rates in our public schools, and my daughter's school has the highest asthma rates of all the schools in the Beloit School District. When they finished Girls on the Run, 6 out of 22 girls had inhalers, and 1 of them needed another bus ride. So to the sweet 9-year-old that just asked the question, we need to prevent that data center because right now the air is not healthy enough for you right now.
I live in Milwaukee County, but I'm from Rock County.
And our big utility monopoly in Milwaukee County, We Energies, has a proposal before the Public Services Commission to pass on 25% of the cost of the additional infrastructure for transmission lines and power plants to feed these data centers, as well as, I believe, 100% of the fuel costs for those new plants onto residential customers, while claiming that it's not gonna raise our rates. And so I'm just wondering if locally here, if any of you are aware of that sort of agreement, that sort of proposal with Alliant Energy for Rock County residential users?
Why, yes, I am. We Energies. So they are also quoted that these will not raise your rates. That tariff agreement will also sunset after 10 years, even though the infrastructure will be paid for out of the lifetime of 30 to 40 years. So then after that sunset, where does it go? On us.
Yeah.
All right, so We Energies was by an independent expert weighing in on that specific docket, called it out as the most egregious tariff proposal in the United States that they had seen. And Alliant is doing worse. Okay, because at least We Energy is creating this new large user class. Alliant is going after it on one contract at a time with the majority redacted application. So how can us as the public engage? And how can the Public Service Commission stay on top of it and enforce and really truly protect us? So the Public Service Commission is about to issue its determination for WPS, for We Energies or WEPCO on their tariff. And about 2 to 4 weeks later, they're gonna decide for us in Alliant in the contract case for Meta. There was a lot of pressure on them to reject it because we deserve a new large tariff class with adequate protections. And so we're hoping that the Public Service Commission upholds it, but this is where we need state level action and decision makers to truly protect us from the cost of these data centers.
My name is Christy. I'm a Janesville resident. Thank you guys so much for being here. I know that the United States likes to think of ourselves as kind of the center of the universe, but obviously we're probably not the only ones experiencing the effects of this big tech boom. What I'm curious about is what, if anything, we know about how other countries, especially ones who historically are more socially and environmentally conscious, are kind of handling these proposals, or what are we seeing in the differences in how they're being proposed to these other countries versus what we're seeing here?
I can tell you that Meta treats every country differently, and by and large, they completely ignore regulations here in the United States, because in a lot of other countries, when they're given a fine, it's calculated as a percentage of their income rather than just a flat $1 million, $2 million. So it does have a significantly bigger impact. Specifically, I know that in the EU, I believe it is Ireland that is very strict with them. There's a couple of other things that go into that, but the biggest thing is, unfortunately, here in the United States, with rollbacks on different types of EPA regulations, there's a lot of talk about don't regulate AI. It's going to, prohibit, the growth of this industry. And so right now we have some communities that the council, the city council in those communities is almost afraid to, say anything to these data centers. They don't want to restrict them, even if they are violating laws. That's where we get kind of the finger pointing, oh, talk to this person, talk to that person, talk to the DNR, talk to your representative. And so it's a lot of just waiting game here versus in other countries, there is a very specific process in place.
Also, I can say that with the environmental regulations, many other countries are much further than us. They were dealing with PFAS way before we were, pharmaceuticals in groundwater, microplastics. And so they are definitely looking at these contaminants, and from my understanding, I don't have a lot of knowledge on this, but they are coming up with different ways to cool the data centers in other countries that don't take this extreme amount of water and power that these do. I also want to mention that the companies are dealing with each state differently. I recently was living and working in Kansas, and one of the data centers that came in there, they are actually agreeing to put in a brand new wastewater treatment facility for the entire municipality in exchange for putting in their data center. And it alarmed me when I moved back here recently to see that we're not even asking for that kind of thing. I mean, they're just, it's a big difference. So there are definitely different states are asking for things like if it's gonna go in, we want something in exchange. So it's a state difference as well.
Do we have any examples of the downstream effects of some of these biocides and the chemicals that they're using in the water and how it affects like the water table, you know, in an actual real world example of a data center that's actively working right now?
I don't have that information available with me right now, but yes, there are a lot of studies out with the data centers that are already going in, that are already operating. I apologize, the one thing that I didn't do that I meant to do tonight is if you Google it, you'll find, usually you'll find it. But there's a report that went out in the last year or so that documented that something like 70% of the data centers in the United States, hyperscale, are already demonstrating that they're not following compliance and regulations, and they're getting fined. And this study was by a very respectable source. And so, as mentioned before, the concern, again, I'm not against development as long as it's responsible, but these data centers are coming in and then they're just getting fined and they don't care. They laugh at it because it doesn't mean anything to them. Well, it means a lot to us. And so they, there really needs to be some strict guidance on them because they are 70% are already breaking the rules and there's nothing stopping them. So with regard to your, there is information, we know what biocides do already. And so we know that with a data center, if it's released into the water, especially into surface water, we know that what impact it's going to have on ecology. And so you can just kind of, if you know how much they're going to be using, you can kind of back out that risk and see. The difficulty with current proposals is we don't have any facts. I don't know. Is it going to be 70,000 million gallons per day or 2 million gallons per day? You know, there's just no actual information to adequately assess.
So I want to thank you all for coming. You're a wealth of information for us. We're much more educated now that you've given us this information. My question though is, where is it in the process? Have they purchased the product? Has the contract been negotiated? The issue I would assume is it's got to be negotiated regarding some of the tax issues with the local government. So where is it in the process?
Yeah, so great question. Specific to the township of Beloit, there's only been, there was the NDA signed and then the pre-development agreement last May signed. So we submitted a number of open records requests and have heard back from both the city of Beloit, the township of Beloit, but yet to hear back from Rock County. But what we did get showed that, and what we've heard from the new town administrator is that they do not have a development proposal right now. But what we have seen as a pattern in Wisconsin is that in Beaver Dam, so much happened behind closed doors that even neighbors to the project didn't know it was a data center or Meta until ground was being broken. So it's really, so the community wasn't engaged or even informed at all what it was, nonetheless, the risks or the potential harms. And so I'm just very grateful for everyone here to help so we can educate and have these conversations now and then be proactive if or when a developer does approach one of the municipalities in Rock County, then our elected officials and community members can be ready to know what questions to ask and how to move forward.
So the property has been purchased, is that correct?
From my understanding, it is still with the original owner.
Right, and the township would be the one who would have to approve the provisions of the contract. So it's our town board is the one that we have to talk with. I mean,
Correct, they were invited today too. But there's a meeting tonight, and yeah, absolutely.
but I think the folks need to know where to go.
Yes.
And if you think, if you believe that you're gonna get the quick action from the governor, from the legislature, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you have to go to your local town board, and it's a very small board. And they're your neighbors. Go talk to them.
And on that note, yeah. On that note, it probably makes sense right now to say that they were getting sworn in tonight, is that correct, or?
The county, the city, and then the township did have a meeting.
They had a meeting, so, and the meetings are just for everyone who doesn't know.
And the final thing I'll say is, Matt is not gonna be worried about, as everybody said, about fines or anything of that nature. But there are legal remedies, injunctions, things of that nature, if it gets to that point. But go to your town board, talk to them, to your neighbors, talk to them, that's how it's gonna get stopped.
I would say though, to counter, that we did go in Beaver Dam we showed up time and time again, knocked on doors. We sat with the joint review board. I met with the mayor of Beaver Dam personally, and this was before they had even voted on the second data center. And her words to me was the city had hired consultants who told them that it was a good idea. They had no intention of listening to residents. And so you may face something like that because your city council, ultimately, they are not data center experts. They don't think that the city residents are data center experts. And so if you do have something like that, then the only other option would be for the higher authority, like the governor, to step in and for there to be some sort of moratorium. Well, and I want to just do a quick shout out to WKOW Dana Fulton, who broke this story. Because she was a superhero that prevented us from potentially becoming the next Beaver Dam. And I also want to follow up with that gentleman's comments that our local elected officials are our neighbors. And they are learning right along with us. And they are the ones that ultimately do make the vote. So it is super important that we engage with them, share with them the information you learned today, and then let's, come to an agreement and decide together how we want to protect what we value in Rock County.
Say something really quick to everyone here. This is a living and breathing beast right now. And many of you are just finding out information. We have been in the know for about 6 weeks now. We have been to the town of Beloit. We had a unofficial town hall. We did get a little bit of information. We have sat in with the Town of Rock Town Board, the zoning committee as well. With the LNG project. So the most important thing that you guys can do right now is have conversations with your neighbors. People that aren't on Facebook, people that don't have access to the same information that you might have. You probably heard from somebody or randomly saw a sign in the yard or were lucky enough to get added to a Facebook group. So there are so many more people like us out there that don't know. And it's important right now to just share information, invite, and just keep talking and asking questions.
Guys,
have to take immediate action, because just because you have a moratorium, the Public Service Commission can override the moratorium. Don't feel safe because you're just putting a moratorium in place. Also, you have to get immediately going on your local ordinances. You have to take it upon yourself to start doing ordinances immediately and setting restrictions and just any kind of guidelines you can, so that if they do come into your community, they can control whatever you can control. If you don't do that, you're gonna get steamrolled. Because the government doesn't care, the Public Service Commission doesn't care. They're not gonna look at DNR reports, they're not gonna look at anything else, they're gonna come in and do whatever they wanna do. So I think there's money attached to the project, because they don't care if the local community gets the money, the Public Service Commission will take the money. And you will get nothing, and you will just have to live with the consequences of that. Also, when you prepare your ordinances, you have to make sure you protect yourself with the biggest and the highest bonds of financial responsibility that you can put on them, with escalator clauses. So that over time, you have damage to your community and you have like toxic contamination that it may never be able to be fixed, but that at least you have some money to start working with to fix the contamination. A data center can spread contaminants in the air for up to 15 miles through the evaporation. And it also releases toxins that go into your waterways, that do go into your soil, and that do then contaminate your food supply also. I appreciate very much what you're doing, but you immediately have to take action. You are not protected from anything. And if the Public Service Commission gets hold of it, they will jam it down your throat and you will be just eating the consequences, because there's nothing you can do. There's only one person on our board for the Public Service Commission right now, and they're not going to fill the other 2 seats until after the election. So there's one person making all the decisions that's going to the Public Service Commission. I was just at a public meeting last night for our township where we're fighting a battery power plant, which is very dangerous, it's extremely toxic. It's terrible for the environment. And we're behind the 8 ball. We're trying so hard to catch up running. And let me tell you, we're in a fight. Don't ever think that you have time on your hands. You have to start fighting now, and you cannot quit. Because
Do you live in Rock County?
No, I do not. I live in Coast County. And I've been fighting this tooth and nail because our farm is connected. The DNR said it's all fine, right? The water that's running off the close property to the battery plant is all tiled into the land on our farm and the river is gonna go right into, they don't care. They don't care if you have nothing about it, they don't care about nothing, they just go through. I live in a 3-mile evacuation zone now, if this project goes through. And we have a little local community volunteer fire department, these batteries will burn up to 17 days. Our fire department can come in and evacuate a 3-mile area where there's schools and small towns and churches and subdivisions in there, and where are people gonna go that they don't breathe in the toxic cobalt just their lungs, and then later on have cancer.
So I was gonna try to recruit you to be one of the co-leaders. You're welcome to join anytime, and I'm connected with groups, would love to connect with you after, connected with groups in Kenosha, but I hope everyone heard what she said.
And I got involved, probably back in January, because there's some conflict on our personal family part, and I didn't want to go public with that. So when I don't know how bad this all is, it is so bad. And if you don't take it into your own hands and do it yourself, nobody is going to do it for you. And you cannot.
We can't wait.
You cannot wait.
So, after we're done with this Q&A, we are going to, well, make sure you got your call to action in hand, because we're still gonna pressure them at every level, but then we're gonna get together, in different parts of the room to really talk about, who wants to follow up with policy, who wants to follow up with community outreach, and who wants to follow up with like media and press. We have to keep this going, in Janesville and Malloy. So let's take a couple more questions, and then we're gonna continue that conversation, because we have amazing folks in the room right now and we need everybody.
Judy Robson,
I think that the pressure should be and still should be on the state. There are no regulations, there are no guidelines, there are no rules to regulate hyperscale data centers. The legislature is no longer in session. There were 2 bills that were introduced and they didn't pass, but there is still hope. There is another legislative or administrative way of keeping this issue alive at the state level. And we have petitions in the back that may help. We're asking Governor Evers to ask his agencies, the DNR, the Department of Administration, the Department of Economic Development, to halt all proposals, all requests, all applications until we are able to review and understand the impact on communities, on health, on ratepayers, and on the environment. I might have said that. The way it's done, the governor asks those agencies to declare an emergency rule. They write it, he signs it, it goes into effect immediately. They have 150 days and it can be renewed. And then there's sort of a legislative option as well. There's a joint committee on review of administrative rules. And if there's any objection to that emergency rule, they will have a public hearing. So that gives an opportunity for us to be able to speak at the state level. And if they object to the emergency rule, this committee, they have to write a bill. And the bill has to go to the legislature for their approval. Legislature is not in session, but Governor Evers could call a special session on reviewing the impact of these hyperscale data centers on communities. It shouldn't be up to the town of Beloit to have that muscle against a big company like Meta. It shouldn't be up to Beaver Dam. It shouldn't be up to Washington. So I think we have a good direction for an action plan to get those petitions to him and let him review it, and let's put pressure on him and put pressure on the legislature to start dealing with the impact of these hyperscale data centers that we have heard can be a disaster in 5 different ways. And thank you, panel.
Oh, are we have one more question? Got time for one more still? Yes, right, last question.
I would like to ask, how are these data centers going to affect the general area of Wisconsin and well, everywhere else that they're gonna be, I guess?
How do they go into effect? Was that your question? Oh, how they're going to affect?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's gonna affect a lot of things from the environment to power bills. It can affect water usage, what chemicals are in the water, what the environment is, how warm it is around the data center. There's so many different ways they affect just our economy, our climate, and our local, what we pay for that, you know? So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of them they talked about tonight, but that's a really great question, and just as we break out into groups, we can talk more about that, but there's a lot of different impacts that they do have. So thank you for the question.
Now, we know that there were a lot more hands raised in the audience tonight. We would love to take all the questions that you guys have. But we are at limited time here tonight. We're gonna wrap some things up. We're gonna give you a little bit more information to kind of tell you what you can do, what's next. So I'm gonna have Cassandra jump in here real quick.
Okay, so these have been all great questions. Thank you all. I am sure there's many more questions that have not been asked yet. So if you still have questions that you want answers to, first of all, please know there's a lot of questions we would still like answers to. But if you still need answers and have questions, there's a couple of tables out in the back with some community groups that are locally working that you guys can connect with and send them your questions and then maybe get some extra answers, because we want to be able to answer as many questions as we possibly can. We have such a short amount of time. So if you still have questions, connect with them. It's easy to ask questions here, maybe not for everybody. I know standing up in front of people and talking is hard, but what you really need to do is take that next step of talking to your elected officials. And I mean, how many of you are gonna walk out this door and go back to your regular life and completely forget that this ever happened to get wrapped up in your own day? So what I would really like you to do is right now, before you walk out the door, come up with a plan of what you're going to do next. Who are you going to contact? How are you gonna get that information? And take the 5 minutes to contact somebody, talk to a neighbor. What are you going to do? Think about that before you leave. All of you should have gotten that half sheet of paper with the call to action on it. If you haven't, the tables out in the back have those. Make sure you grab one. It has information about your state level, county level, local level officials. Make sure that you sign the petition. Make sure that you talk to your Rock County board members about signing a ban for NDAs, and contact your local level officials. If you don't know how to do that, please contact one of those groups out there, get their email and ask them, how do I contact my local official? And then they can send you a list or send you to a link of how you can get a hold of those local officials. We don't want you to walk out of here not knowing what to do and where to go. So make sure that you take the time to ask. We're gonna have, Youssef is gonna have a group of people talking about, you wanna give a little explanation of what we're doing for that?
Yeah, so if you're interested in getting it, organizing and helping us with community outreach and engagement, or head over after we break, and chat with Yusuf. We'll have a policy conversation up in this front corner, for like future events and like media will be in that back corner, and then Janesville specific.
Janesville has a table out in the little area outside of in the hallway out here. You can connect with us if you want to know more about what's going on in Janesville. If you live in the city of Janesville and you want to get more action in and to help with what's going on up there, please talk to us out at that table also.
And just want to highlight that we're all Rock County. And so we're here to advocate for Rock County, but then we're all Wisconsin. And so we're hopeful that this petition effort is going to help our friends in Beaver Dam and Port Washington and Mount Pleasant. And I just want you all to know that even by signing that petition, you will help make a difference.
And then we've got Shelley with a little bit of a last minute, her last closing statements for you.
So also at the bottom of the half sheet that was passed out, there is a QR code. Please scan that QR code. There's a link tree in there, lots of like unlimited list of resources in there, whether you're interested in donating to our nonprofit, if you're interested in upcoming events, if you're looking for how to get a hold of the town of Lloyd, the town of Rock, the state senators, whatever we have on there, we're gonna keep adding to that link tree, so you have an unlimited resource available at your fingertips. I know that this has been an amazing night with lots and lots of information. I'm sure you're gonna all feel overwhelmed. We don't want you to have information hangover, but we do want to continue to remind you that we are still working on this living, breathing thing right now. We're looking for people to volunteer. We're looking for people that are willing to help. Maybe people that have experience or other resources that we're unaware of. So, please reach out to us. We're always looking to add more people to our community. My hope is that you have a great place to start tonight. Maybe you're ready to take the next step, because this cannot be where this ends. So keep asking questions, keep sharing with your community, keep having conversations, even when they're not easy, even when you feel pushback from those around you. Don't be afraid to have those conversations and ask those hard questions, because we are a community and we are in this together. So change only happens, guys, when we stay engaged. So don't try to disengage, don't let other people push you around and have you step back from this, because this is something that affects all of us, whether it's a half a mile down the road like it is for me, or you're 3 counties away. You're still a part of this. This is still gonna affect you one way or another. So this is our community, it's our future, and it should include all of the voices. So I hope you guys have an amazing night. Again, check out the tables, ask some questions. If you want to know where to go, you need a little extra guidance, we're all here to help you and point you in the right direction.
And also, huge thank you to Blackhawk Tech. Isn't this a phenomenal group? It is fantastic.